Welcome everyone back to another edition of The Future is Female. For those of you who can't see me right now, I am smiling ear to ear because my lovely co-host Nicole Pinter is officially 21 years old today. Nicole, welcome into the show, of course, just like we do every week. How are you doing today on a very special day?
Doing pretty well. Yeah, today, 21, legal. That doesn't mean much for me. I will still be drinking lemonade, but that's okay. It's been a good day so far. Can't complain.
Can't complain at all, and I'm hoping I'll make your day a little bit better. I want to do this on our show. Happy birthday, Nicole. I'm going to Venmo you money right now, so first drink is on me.
That's too
So,
sweet of you, Gabby. That's
and if that drink is lemonade, then you go, girl. You go, because I'm going to be honest with you, I prefer lemonade anyways. It's way cheaper.
there you
So,
go.
first drink on me. Happy birthday, Nicole. Let's just start off by saying we love you on this show. The show, of course, wouldn't be what it is without you. 21, I can't believe it. I'm sorry that we have to celebrate over Zoom right now. Hopefully, in person next year, we'll be able to make up for it or at some point in our lives. So yeah, happy birthday. I'm glad you got to play tennis this morning. How was
I
that?
did. It was good. My mom still beats me, but that's okay.
So mom's got it. Mom's got it
Yes,
going still.
she's always
Okay.
had it.
Okay, and what is the plan for birthday like tonight? Are there any big plans or anything like that?
Dinner and pretty much hanging out. I'm pretty chill.
Okay, pretty chill. I love to hear that. That's what I did for my 21st birthday, especially right now, COVID. Don't
Gotta
know
be
if we
safe.
want to be walking. Yeah, don't know if we want to be walking into a bar right now. But 21 years old, Nicole. I'm grateful that I've known you for like the last like probably two and a half of them. I'd say three of them almost.
3.
That's awesome. Three of them, right?
I would
19, 20,
I feel like it.
21.
I don't know. But thank you,
Well,
Gabby. Thank you.
of course. Happy birthday, buddy. I'm not gonna sing to you because I sound like a dying it sounds like somebody's dying in my throat when I try and sing, so I'm not going to do that to you or our lovely listeners on this wonderful radio show. So, of course, Nicole, as the birthday girl, let's toss it over to you. What are we breaking down today for the first thing on this show?
NFL draft, and we're starting with Trevor Lawrence. He's obviously number one overall. We're like what 2 weeks away now. He's the obvious number one overall. Seems like Zach Wilson's number two. Gabby, I'm gonna actually throw it right back to you. What do you think about this? Is Lawrence worth all the hype? Is Wilson worth all the hype?
I I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think Trevor Lawrence was so dominant in college. His greatness is actually going to work against him in the NFL because college football versus the NFL are two different animals. I'm not saying he won't be successful, but I have a bad feeling that after like the first preseason game, if he throws like two interceptions in that game and no touchdowns, they're going to start already saying that he's like a bust because he was so dominant at the collegiate level. He won a national title. He made it to the national semifinals all 3 years of college. He made it to the national championship game a second time. He was just so dominant every single week. I'm afraid that like his success at the collegiate level is actually going to hurt him initially when he gets to the NFL. And then people are going to have to tamper their expectations just a little bit to to give him permission to be a 21-year-old, to give him permission to adjust his body and the way that he has to play to the literal most dominant and beastly and competitive league, in the world when it comes to football. Um, I think you can't really compare football to every other league, but within the sport itself, the NFL is just on another level. There's nothing else like it in the entire world. So I think he is going to meet expectations, but I have a bad feeling those expectations are just going to be a little bit too high right when he starts out. Nicole, what about you?
Yeah, I'm actually right there with you on this. I think not that he's not worth the hype. He's obviously one of the best prospects ever. I would still grade Andrew Luck over him, but he's still one of the best. But I think you're right about the fact that he's almost, if not already, peaked at the college level. I think we've seen the best of Trevor Lawrence. Now, the best of Trevor Lawrence in college that could absolutely work in the NFL. And I think it will. But excuse me, my worry is, like you said, even if it's just a little bit of a downward slope, which is fine because going to the NFL is hard. That's a hard transition.
Right.
Even if it's just a little bit of a downward slope, the media is going to start talking, right? And it's
Right.
going to start being like, oh, maybe he didn't fit the bill. It was too much, too high of expectations. And those are my worries with him as well, is just that, are the expectations too high? Is the hype too much? Because it's just one of the more obvious first number one overall picks in the last like several years. And I'm not, I hate going on here and saying any of these players are going to be bad. And I don't think Trevor Lawrence will be bad. If he's anywhere within range of his peak, I think he's still going to be great at the NFL.
It feels
But
like he's been,
sorry,
but
I
it,
also worry about him going to the Jags. And this is what I'll say the same with Zach Wilson, because the Jags, and I was surprised, it was the best coaching job until I heard that their owner controls rosters. And then it suddenly became one of the worst head coaching jobs. So that's a concern for me. Urban Meyer's a great college coach, one of the best ever. Does that translate to the NFL? It's the people around him just as much. Got some great receivers down there. Got some, excuse me, playmakers. But yeah, I'm with you, and it's very similar with Wilson, just without the expectations.
right. You mentioned it. I feel like he has been expected to be the number one pick since he was about 16 years old. Like for the last like 4 or 5 NFL drafts, at least for all the drafts where he has been in college playing at Clemson, it's always been, if Trevor Lawrence were eligible, he would be number one. If Trevor Lawrence were eligible, he would be going ahead of Baker Mayfield, of Kyler Murray, of, all of these major quarterbacks who have been number one overall and have had some kind of semblance of success in the league. So when you pile that on to this idea that like it feels like people have imagined him in an NFL uniform since he was a junior in high school, even though he's never actually set foot on an NFL field, he's never had his name on an NFL roster. That doesn't help the expectations either. Only time will tell, of course, what happens to him at the professional level. God forbid injury occur or something like that. I feel like he's one athlete that like a lot of people just think he's so likable. Like nobody is like actively like genuinely rooting against him. He doesn't have like a troubled past. He grew up in a nice family. He grew up in a very nice middle class part of the South and all of that. And so like it feels like he's like this very likable prospect too, that like everybody just wants to succeed. I'm not saying that anybody should ever be rooting against an NFL draft prospect or anything, but it feels like it's even more heightened with Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, I agree. It feels like the cards are kind of all in his favor a little bit there, more so than with most draft picks. And maybe it's just part of the time we live in as well. But moving on to Zach Wilson, and because we're already want to get moving ahead to so many things, we'll do Zach Wilson and Justin Fields together. Because I guess I'll start. I'm not sold on Zach Wilson. I'm not sold that he is better than Justin Fields. And more importantly, I'm not sold that he's better than Sam Darnold. And that's important because he's going to the Jets. He's almost definitely going to the Jets. And similar to Jacksonville, it's New York. It's a hard place to succeed in because of the media, because of the expectations, because it's New York. And I'm not sold he's better than Fields or Darnold's, really. I don't want to come out and say he's going to be a bust because I don't know. And I could be reading him very wrong, but there's nothing I've seen from him. He's athletic, he can move. He'll want to bust the other guy, he'll want to run the other guy over, but you can't do that in the NFL because the other guy is significantly bigger. And everything moves at a different pace. And you know me, I would never hate on mid majors. I'm not going to come out and say just because he played in such and such conference with such and such opponents that, that somehow isn't worth it, right? That's somehow a concern. That's not a concern. My concern is his play with Wilson and just the fact that he's going with the Jets. Now with Fields I really like. And the question you posed here, Gabby, was, is he really worth being doubted on? No. And the doubts on him are really odd too. And as a lot of people have pointed out, it's part of this racial bias and this prejudice that we're still moving on from. And I think that's absolutely
Right.
true. And actually, Lewis Riddick brought up on Get Up this morning that Trevor Lawrence was talking about, not having a chip on his shoulder. And people would freak out if Justin Fields said that. And they're absolutely right. People would be like, whoa, 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 maybe, maybe he's not right. Maybe he can't do this or whatever. And
Right.
that's just absurd. But my concerns with Fields are more so he can make the pass, but what I've noticed is he'll either, and he did this in this pro day a couple of times, where he'll underthrow or overthrow the receiver and get bailed out by the receiver. It's not a huge overthrow. It's not a huge underthrow. It's still within an area they can get, the receiver can get and make a play, unless it's underthrown. But he's had good receivers and they've bailed him out a few times. But I think that's fixable. And I think that's something you
Right.
can work with. And that goes back to my concerns with Lawrence. I don't think you want a finished product in the NFL. I think you still want someone you can work with. Again, not that Lawrence is going to be bad. He's a great finished product. That's probably the best finished product you want to have up next to Luck. But that's where I stand with these three. What are your thoughts, Gabby?
I mean, to quickly run through it, I feel like the media itself has created this narrative that all of a sudden Justin Fields isn't ready for the NFL, even though it felt like just a few months ago he was expected to be like the second quarterback taken in the draft. Like Lawrence was here, everybody else was kind of down here, and then Justin Fields was, right below Lawrence as the number 2 overall pick. And then for some reason, the last few months, his draft stock it hasn't plummeted, but his draft stock has dropped. I don't really understand why. I don't know if there's racial bias involved with it. I don't know if there's. I don't know exactly what the storyline is, but I don't think there's any reason for his draft stock to drop. So I still think that Fields is worth the gamble. If you can't take Lawrence, then I think you should be taking him. Moving on, of course, from Trevor Lawrence, from Justin Fields, from like essentially this big three of quarterbacks that we had going, to Mac Jones, someone who's essentially dominated NFL draft talk conversations for probably the last 6 weeks. Nicole, what are your thoughts on the young quarterback?
Man, it's so hard. I'm not sold on Mac Jones either, but I think it's hard to be sold on any college quarterback going into the NFL just because of how different it is. I know I'm kind of making an out for myself here, but I really don't like Mac Jones. I'm sorry. It's I don't know what it is. He's had great receivers, but that's not a lot of good quarterbacks in the NFL had great receivers in college. I just Listen, I think the best case scenario for him would be to be drafted by the 49ers and be with Kyle Shanahan and possibly Jimmy Garoppolo. I think that's the best scenario for him. I think the second best would be the Patriots, although him and Cam Newton's playmaking abilities are not similar. They're not entirely compatible. Not that Cam Newton wouldn't be a great mentor. They don't play the same way. Um, yeah, I'm not sold on Mac Jones. I think the 49ers, it would be in their best interest to draft Justin Fields. And that's now we're in the weird place where everyone's going back and forth on who exactly what it is. Like, excuse me, Mac Jones is considered groupthink if you think he's going to the 49ers, but like
Right.
Fields is, it's weird. It's weird. They'll probably take Mac Jones, but I think they should take Fields.
I I don't see it with Fields. I don't see the competitive fire with him. He's a lot
You mean
smaller
Jones?
with Jones. I'm sorry, with
Okay,
Jones.
just making sure.
I see it with Fields. I don't see it with Jones. Sorry guys, it's been a long day and I didn't sleep much last night. We love being a college student at the end of the semester. Anyways, I don't see it with Jones. I really don't. Um, and of course, maybe Jones falls in the draft. Maybe he does. Maybe all this hype is just like blowing up smoke so that nobody knows what's actually going to happen in the draft because teams have been prone to do that. Nicole, speaking of the draft, a team that's picking a little bit later on, I doubt that Mac Jones will still be on the board at that point, but your Chicago Bears have the 20th overall pick. So, what exactly do you think will happen?
Oh, Gabby, I don't know. Because here's the thing, the Bears do this every year where they just kind of stumble into 8-8, maybe make the playoffs if they're lucky, which they did because there was a seventh spot. And they put themselves in this place every year where they need a quarterback. But they're the 20th pick. They're not really in a position to draft a franchise quarterback, meaning they'd have to trade up for a franchise quarterback. But they need other they still need other positions. They're not a quarterback away. I know a lot of people talk about the defense with the Bears. To me, they're not a quarterback away. The offensive line, a lot of question marks. I think needs almost a complete overhaul outside of the center and the right guard. I think the secondary has some question marks because Kyle Fuller is no longer a Bear. Eddie Jackson had a down year. I have no question marks about Jalen Johnson, but I'm not entirely, I think there still needs to be more there. We could be in a similar position with a tight end in like 2 years. Not that that's a worry about this draft, but we could be in a very similar position with the tight end position from last year. And that's the thing, because the Bears in the first round need an O-line no matter what. If I were Ryan Pace, I'm not trading up for a quarterback unless it's past the 10th pick, and only for 2 quarterbacks. Trey Lance, because I really like his upside, and Justin Fields for the same reason. If either of those quarterbacks, one or both, make it past pick 10, trade up. Don't trade into the top 10 picks because they're going to give up too much, and they can't do that. They need to draft a quarterback, but then they signed Andy Dalton. You see, it's exactly like when they drafted Trubisky a few years ago. They traded up for Trubisky, but they paid Mike Glennon so much money. Gabby, I'm living in a circle. It just keeps going, and it's not going to stop. And it's going to be 5 years from now, and we're going to be having the exact same conversation. So if I'm the Bears, I'll break it down for you.
So just to be clear, on your 26th birthday, we'll have this same conversation.
It's entirely likely. And Jim Harbaugh could be the head coach of the Chicago Bears. I mean, like, it's a possibility. He played there, so he played on the Bears, so it's a possibility. Depending, it could be as soon as next year. We're talking about that. Yeah. So let me wrap it up.
I'm literally gonna cry. Oh my god.
So if the Bears stay at 20, draft an O-lineman. That's absolutely what they need. If Trey Lance or Justin Fields make it past pick 10, trade up. Otherwise, don't. Stay at pick 20, draft an O-lineman, draft more O-linemen, and then draft some players in the secondary, and maybe a wide receiver. Maybe a running back in the 7th round if they really want to. But that, if I'm Ryan Pace, which I'm not because he thinks he's the smartest guy in the room, that's what I would do. So, yeah, I might be crying on that day, but we'll see. We'll see. I have hope. I'm gonna be optimistic until it comes by.
There you go. The draft is still a few weeks away, so stay tuned for possible tears from Nicole Pinter on this show. And today, though, no tears, all good vibes because it's her birthday. We do all good vibes on this show on Nicole's birthday, even if she is a little bit frustrated with her Bears. That's just the nature of being in the sports landscape.
Yeah, and we haven't even gotten to Michigan football, but that's okay.
Oh, it's okay. We'll get to Michigan football another show. But moving on right now, of course, from the football field to the basketball court, both sides of the league here. This is kind of what we're going to focus on, starting with the NBA. The National Basketball Association is in full swing right now. We're actually creeping up towards the playoffs very, very quickly. The playoffs will actually start right around the time the WNBA season starts in about a month. Exactly 1 month from yesterday, the WNBA season tips off. So the Lakers are still struggling right now without LeBron James and Anthony Davis. Both players are expected to return closer to playoff time, which is in about a month. I'm not worried as a Lakers fan because I know I think the team has the experience. They have the ability to turn it on when they need to, and I don't think this year is any different from that. Moving on, though, from the Lakers to a really heartbreaking situation, Jamal Murray tears his ACL against the Warriors the other night in the last 50 seconds of the game. A young star point guard who became a superstar last year in the NBA bubble, was getting on the map as a possible franchise player, someone who has lived in the shadows of his star player, Nikola Jokic, for the last 2-3 years, is all of a sudden bursting onto the scene. Now, who knows what's going to happen? Hopefully he recovers quickly from that. And then, of course, transitioning from a player who tore his ACL to, one player on the other side who is playing really well right now. It's Steph Curry for the Golden State Warriors. The Warriors are not a very good team this year. Let's put that out there now. The Warriors, not a good team this year at all. But Steph Curry is still Steph Curry. He went off for 53 points the other night. He went off, he went off and just absolutely exploded in not only that game, but then he also exploded the other night. He had 42 points at the end of the third quarter on, I believe it was on Tuesday night. And Steve Kerr literally stopped him and said, no, you're not going back into the game, bud. Like, that's cute, but you're not going back into the game. You've hit 11 threes, you're done. So, of course, it's hard to manage minutes for a superstar like that, especially one like Curry. The Warriors are not in the playoff hunt right now, but in the future years, they're definitely going to want Curry at the helm. So it's fun to see him at least thriving. And then, of course, literally just this morning, this news broke. We're recording this on Thursday afternoon, like we always do. LaMarcus Aldridge announces his retirement from the NBA. 15 years in the league. He had an issue with his heart not that long ago and decided that this meant it was it. It was time to call it quits. And I give him so much credit for doing that because I don't think enough 30-something men who are playing professional basketball, who are making millions upon millions of dollars year in and year out, would have the guts to say, I need to put my health above everything else right now, and I need to walk away. God forbid something worse did happen to him. Luckily, nothing has, so I think he made the right call doing that. Nicole, a lot of NBA news we just blew through in like the last 2 minutes. What are your thoughts on all of it?
And I'll give my thoughts just as quickly as I can. The Lakers are still a championship threat. I think especially if LeBron and AD return close to playoff time, because that's all that really matters. Now, if they are closer to the play-in games than actual home court advantage, that could be interesting. They're still a championship threat as long as they stay healthy. Jamal Murray, that just sucks. And I really feel for him. I feel for the Nuggets. I think the Nuggets are still a threat in the West. I still think they can cause some damage, but the Utah Jazz and the Phoenix Suns still exist and are playing very well. So it's going to be very hard. It became a lot harder for them at the very least, but they're not out of it or bad by any means. Steph Curry's really good. We knew this. We've been new. Let's not act surprised, but yeah, really cool when he does things like this, especially on a Warriors team that's really sad. And then again, a lot, like you said, a lot of credit to LaMarcus Aldridge. He said it was a regular heartbeat that I can't even imagine. So really happy he put his health and his family first. And like you said, just a lot of credit, a lot of respect.
A lot of respect for the fact that, especially coming from someone like me who, I lost someone I really care about to heart disease, and it was in part because they didn't prioritize their health and their wellness. And it makes me really happy that LaMarcus Aldridge is doing that. Despite any money he might be leaving behind, nobody cares. Who cares how much money you make if you're not going to be able to live to actually enjoy it? That's what I always kind of say to people when they try and put like business and economic value above like their own personal and emotional health and physical health. So shout out LaMarcus Aldridge on that one. A lot of NBA news we're going to get into in the coming weeks. But transitioning from one basketball court to another, to wrap up the show today, we're actually doing something that's literally starting right as we record this show. The WNBA draft is here. It's the 25th time that we're doing it. It's about to be the 25th season of this incredible league. I find myself, I have to pinch myself most days because I'm working in the league now, and this is my first time ever, working the draft. I'm going to be working it later tonight for my team. But Nicole, how excited are you for the WNBA season? I mean, I know you're not as big of a WNBA fan as I am, but like, how excited are you not only for the draft, but just for the season in general?
I think season's going to be a fun one. And yeah, the draft literally starting as we speak. I think there's so much to be excited about with the WNBA. And I think it's cool to see a lot of people acknowledge that as well. And I saw you, and you actually got Susan Wong this as well, the orange hoodie. Those are sweet. So I think those blew up last year. And so it's really cool to see everyone get excited for it. And like I said, with what we just saw in March Madness, there's a lot to be excited about where everyone's going to go. And you sort of had the rundown on that.
I did have the rundown on it. And unfortunately, by the time this plays over Blaze Radio, this will no longer be a thing. True. But in the current moment we're in the era that we're in Zoom and everything like that, being in two different states, this is the era we're in. Charlie Collier is expected to be the number 1 overall pick. That could literally happen as we finish up this show in the next 3 minutes. But Charlie Collier is expected to be number 1 overall from Texas. There's a lot of noise as well with players from the Pac-12. So from right here on the West Coast, Kiana Williams is expected to go in the first round. Michaela Onyenwere might be going in the first round from UCLA. And then, of course, Ari McDonald from the state that I'm currently living in, Arizona. From the University of Arizona, she's also expected to go somewhere in that first round, possibly as high as like number 3 and as low as like maybe number 8 or 9. So there's a lot of movement as well, just with the Pac-12 alone, just kind of showing how dominant the women's basketball, side of the country is, because it is. It's probably the best crop of players in the entire nation. Some would probably argue that there's a lot of great players that are coming as well from the Midwest, from places like Baylor, from places like Texas. Obviously, I don't know if University of Texas is in the Midwest. That's my West Coast brain, not really understanding geography.
Kind of. Are we going to get into what's West and Midwest debate? I would say kind of. It's Central Standard Zone time. It's the same as here in Illinois. So yeah.
There you go. Okay, well,
we'll
there
call
you go.
it that.
We'll call it that. But yeah, there's going to be a lot of movement in the WNBA draft tonight. If you're listening to this after the fact, go back and look over who was drafted where, because I can tell you this, it's one of the most wide open drafts we've had in a long time. There is not a undisputed talent like a Sabrina Ionescu that's going to go number 1, or a Trevor Lawrence or a Zion Williamson. There is not that kind of player in this year's draft, but that makes it all the more exciting, because all these players have literally dominated, for the last several years in college basketball, and they're all kind of a little bit more unknown than like a Sabrina is. And Nicole, you just messaged it to me. Dallas is about to be on the clock, of course, with that number 1 overall pick. They're most likely going to be picking the kid from, locally from within the state of Texas to go alongside Satu Sabally, which, if I'm anybody but the Dallas Wings, I'm going to be really scared of that lineup. Satu Sabally, Arike Ngumbawale, and Charlie Collier. Are you kidding me? Get the heck out of my way. Arike Ngumbawale alone, and then you put her with 2 of the very best, brightest, youngest bigs in the country. That's a scary sight. Satu Sabally is the star player from the University of Oregon. She graduated last year from Oregon. She's originally from Germany. She's originally from Berlin, Germany. Her younger sister Niara Sabally currently plays at Oregon. She was just drafted last year by the Wings. This year, it's looking like they're probably going to take the local kid. But of course, Nicole, do we have enough time to stay on to see who that number 1 pick is?
It's going to be close. So we're going to just kind of, okay, they're officially on the clock as we speak. Again, recording on Thursday, premiering on Friday. Unless you want to go to my YouTube channel and see us talk about this. So we're going to just break as much time as we can. The new WNBA jerseys are so amazing. I'm going to take a few seconds to focus on the sky. The black pinstripe is beautiful. The blue, the light blue, and I want to say it's like shooting stars kind of a thing. I fell in love with on first sight. I would like that jersey with Candace Parker's name on it as soon as possible. Yeah, they're so good. They're so good.
I completely agree with you on the side of the WNBA jerseys. I was at work today. I was at work at the gym, on campus, and this one guy that I work with, his name's Dylan. He's a freshman, and he was wearing like a Stranger Things t-shirt, and he asked me, he's like, "Gabby, what do you think of my t-shirt?" I was like, "Oh, that's really cool." I was like, that's awesome. And I looked at him, I was like, there are actually WNBA jerseys inspired by Stranger Things. And he looked at me and he was like, wow. He's like, really? So he looks up the jersey. He's like, oh my gosh, those are so cool. So like, I think I even convinced him to buy a WNBA jersey today because he loves Stranger Things. And Nicole, you just messaged me. It's official. Charlie Collier from the University of Texas goes number 1 overall to the Dallas Wings. No surprise there. I said it 2 minutes ago that's probably who they were going to pick. Nicole, what are your thoughts on that pick? Do you even have many thoughts on the pick?
I think great pick. Again, limited WNBA knowledge. I promise I'll be better this year. She showed out for Texas in March Madness, though, in a run that they were not expected to make. So great pick again, local kid, and like you said, they're going to be scary. and they have the number 2 overall pick too. So
they're just gonna be a scary sight. Period. Whether or not they actually keep both of those picks and both of those players, kind of remains to be seen. That's just a very, very young roster that they're trying to put out on the court right now, considering how young Satu and Arike and Ngombawale both are. So, bright future ahead, of course, for the Dallas Wings. It's a bright future ahead for every single young woman getting drafted as we speak on this show. Please tune into the draft recaps after they're done. Tune into our show because we're going to continue dissecting and breaking down what happened in the WNBA draft tonight and what might happen in the NFL draft in the future. Of course, for Nicole Pinter, the birthday girl, you got any last words before we sign off today?
Feels weird to be 21, like everyone else. Grateful to still be alive in this time, of course. Also want to say on my birthday is Jackie Robinson Day, which has always been an honor to share my birthday with. Officially broke the color barrier on this day. I forget who did it, but there was a great piece on others who broke the color barrier in their respective sports. Go look at it. Very cool thing. I've always loved sharing my birthday with Jackie Robinson Day.
Happy Jackie Robinson Day to the world. Happy birthday to Nicole Pinter. Until next time, thank you all so much for tuning in to The Future is Female. We will see you all again next week.